consciousness and the cosmos, a path to one's own inner cosmos.
In assistance of the more profound understanding of the current planetary transition, a stimuli that accompanies the pilgrim in his return to his cosmic home.
Hello, dear listeners. My name is Katya.
My name is Sara Winak.
And I am Jez. We will be hosting the program.
The Consciousness and the Cosmos, radio program of Uksim, Planetary Service Centre. I would like to share with our listeners an interview with Daniel Gagliardo, which was given for a radio program in Uksim, Argentina.
This interview is special because Daniel has participated in radio programs for 10 years in the past, and this is his first return to it after a gap of some years. In this interview, Daniel talks about his Cosmosophy conference tour around the world. The full interview with Daniel Gagliardo is available for you to listen to. We'll present it to you in parts.
We're currently witnessing the launch of a world tour by Daniel Gagliardo, the founder, representative, and the instructor of Uksim Planetary Service Centre. This tour has been going on for several years now, and it raises the question why the starting point is so significant. We are currently in a unique location, although the closest city is Capilla del Monte, because the tour launch commences from this very spot.
Podría verse desde varias aristas. Una es que todo trabajo tiene una espiral, ¿sí? Objetivo o subjetivo. Nosotros todos los miércoles y los sábados de hace muchísimos años damos estas charlas con el tenor que fuera en Sierra del Cielo.
We have been giving these talks every Wednesday and Saturday for many years. In this spiral, when we started the world tour, we started with Capilla del Monte, and the spiral in this case will continue to Via General Belgrano. Then it starts more comprehensively, playing other cities and other countries until we finally reach France, Portugal, Spain, and Bulgaria. We believe it is significant because the energy always keeps a ceremonial pattern. And what we were shown was we had to accompany the spiraling ceremony of the energy from here, from the Aix Valley, from the epicenter that feeds our work, both outwardly and obviously and subjectively and occultly.
Sabemos que este es un área muy particular del planeta, es un centro energético planetario, un centro planetario que es la base de la civilización de Erx, pero no lo hacemos estrictamente por eso, sino en respuesta a esto que se nos mostraba, ¿no? De ir ampliando la espiral de servicio.
We are aware that a specific location on the planet serves as a planetary energy center for the Erx civilization. However, we are not solely focusing on it for that reason. Instead, we feel compelled to expand our service regarding energy in response to what has been shown to us internally from the hierarchies. We know that in the future, this spiral will have segments that do not exist now, and some of those that exist today may not manifest themselves. So, in response to an internal indication more than anything else, it will be in obedience.
Did the other center instructors fail to respond?
Más que nada inicialmente de la no respuesta de quienes inicialmente tenían que sentar las bases de los grupos, porque los instructores en esta etapa de transición se asientan sobre los grupos que han pasado suficientemente y progresivamente a instalar las bases.
In the beginning, it is crucial for those who are responsible for forming groups to receive a response. The instructors need to evaluate the groups that have made enough progress and laid down strong foundations during this transitional stage.
Que fueron estimulados internamente en este planeta no han completado las 3 fases o han pasado con muchas deficiencias y fluctuancia por alguna de esas fases. Entonces, salvo que el grupo realmente pase por esto de captar el propósito.
If a group is unable to establish a stable foundation, the instructors cannot continue working with them. This applies to all groups that have the potential to emerge during the transition phase. First, a group of consciousness has to attune to a purpose, then deepen, visualize the purpose, then deepen it, and then unify all efforts to carry it forward. Most of the groups of people internally stimulated on this planet have not completed all 3 phases or have experienced many deficiencies and fluctuations during some of those phases. So unless the group really goes through this process of grasping the purpose to which it is internally committed and then deepening it, deepening means really defining its relationship genuinely to that purpose, with the least amount of fantasy, hallucination, of spiritual and philosophical ambition, then that is where, in a sense, the forging of that group is consummated, which is when they all unify their efforts for that evolutionary work shown to them.
For a group of people to recognize a group task, it has to have been receptive to the inner cosmos present in each one, which was the one who nurtured the ability to recognize that purpose. Once they unify that, that is where, if the consciousness of the planet, the planetary hierarchy, the inner sets of consciousness, see that group as the right forging, then the instructor incarnates.
Que es cuando todos unifican los esfuerzos para ese trabajo evolutivo que les fue mostrado, porque en realidad, para que un conjunto de personas reconozca una tarea grupal, tiene que haber sido receptiva del cosmos interno presente en cada una, que fue quien alimentó la capacidad de reconocimiento de ese propósito.
Why we say incarnates? Because in these times of transition, the instructor generally, there may be exceptions, enters the group that was prepared for us, for his or her energy of instruction through monadic transmutation. The most receptive being, or some of the most receptive beings in that group, are going to offer the personality consciousness, which, up to that point, is the domain of the expression of a particular modata and a particular soul, to an instructor who is going to take that personality, what we call taking the suits, taking the personality bodies, the mental body, the emotional astral, the physical etheric body, taking those bodies through monadic transmutation. That is, ceremonially taking over those bodies.
Porque la energía de instrucción, la relación del instructor con sus discípulos comienza mucho antes de que el grupo esté formado. Solo que para que se manifieste en la materia ese instructor en esta etapa de transición, se tienen que dar ciertos pasos. Es decir, el grupo tiene que estar en condiciones de llevar con compromiso, madurez, fidelidad y devoción adelante la tarea.
Is when that instructor begins to manifest, to be present. Because of the energy of instruction, the instructor's relationship with his disciples begins long before the group is formed. Certain steps must be taken for that instructor to manifest in matter in this transitional stage. That is, the group must be able to carry forward the task with commitment, maturity, fidelity, and devotion, which lays the foundation for the instructor who is internally in contact with his disciples to make contact with the egos and personalities.
That does not happen overnight. Is that somehow what happened with Uksim Group?
Es lo que pasó con Grupo Uksim y lo que potencialmente puede pasar con cualquier grupo que reúna las condiciones y características. Lamentablemente, a medida que avanza la transición planetaria, la congestión de la capa psíquica, la distracción de las personas respecto a su planificación interna.
It is what happened with the Uksim group, and what can potentially happen with any group that meets the conditions and characteristics. Unfortunately, as the planetary transition progresses, the congestion of the psychic layer, the distraction of people from their inner planning, and their sometimes almost animalistic attraction to what the three-dimensional world has to offer makes this very difficult. Some beings have exceptional conditions with the majority, internally speaking, yet they cannot bridge the gap between the ego and the personality of those being expressing their inner life. They are also so committed to materialism, involutive forces and material forces that those egos and personalities cannot respond to the inner stimuli. As we have said so many times, there is a limit to stimulation. The inner world knows exactly what that limit is and cannot overstimulate either the ego or the personality. So they end up responding, pulled by the hair, carried by the hair.
El ser tiene que llegar a un grado de discernimiento que proceda estrictamente, ¿sí?, de la mano de obra propia. Los estímulos son un gran alimento, una gran asistencia, pero el ser tiene que hacer lo que corresponda con esa materia prima.
That is to say, the being must arrive at a degree of discernment that comes strictly from its own labor. Stimuli are great nourishment and assistance, but the being must do what is appropriate with that raw material. A person can have the best ingredients of evolutionary nourishment and make a mess of those ingredients. This is what is happening with many people who potentially incarnated with their planning to carry forward in summative terms, not exclusively themselves, but as a whole, to carry forward the evolutionary group work.
arrive at particular spirituality, we often talk about neutralizing the evolutive forces in ourselves. We can go deeper into this because it is the basis for tuning our attention from the material to the inner life, beyond the inner aspiration.
Para que un ser pueda neutralizar en alguna medida, porque la neutralización absoluta es un imposible, por decirlo así, pero para que un ser pueda, en la medida adecuada, neutralizar las fuerzas disuasivas, las fuerzas involutivas con su conciencia, tiene que contar con una herramienta que procede de la vida interna.
For a being to be able to neutralize to some extent, because absolute neutralization is an impossibility, but for a being to be able to neutralize the dissuasive forces, the involutionary forces, with his consciousness to an adequate extent, he has to have a tool that comes from the inner life. But for this tool coming from the inner life to be effectively in the power of the one who has to make this trial of neutralization, he must first place something which, if it is not there, the process does not progress, which is an inner vocation. There are many ways of talking about it. If there is no inner vocation, no spiritual vocation, no vocation of service, and no love for the unknown, that tool is not within our reach, placed by our soul, by our spiritual consciousness.
Nadie puede, por sus propias fuerzas personales y egoicas, neutralizar, ¿sí?, el asedio, la influencia de las fuerzas involutivas, porque no tenemos realmente...
No one can neutralize the siege, the influence of the involutionary forces by their own personal and egoic forces, because we don't have that given context. That is to say, there is no karmic power for the ego and personality to summon sufficient strength or resilience to face the planetary psychic field.
Pero no hay nada presente, ni todo y la totalidad del campo psíquico que pueda con la vida interna. Por eso el ser necesita primero haber descubierto vocación interior, lo que quiere decir que él tiene un precedente evolutivo. La vocación interna se produce como cualidad en la conciencia.
But there is nothing present, not everything, not the totality of the psychic field that can conquer the inner life. That's why the being needs, first of all, to discover its inner vocation, which means that he has an evolutionary precedent, which means that the inner vocation is produced as a quality in the consciousness, in the context of the search throughout incarnations and incarnations and incarnations, where the being gradually discovers the profound need to give himself, to donate himself to the inner search, which, by a transitive character, is to donate himself to the cosmos, to the cosmic reality itself. Otherwise, what will happen is to engage in fantasy, practically in hallucination. No one, by strictly summoning the forces of the personality, can oppose the involutionary forces. On their ground, they are unbeatable because they do their work correctly. In contrast, we do not do our work of seeking the inner life, of opening ourselves receptively, genuinely to the inner cosmos. These forces do their work continuously, as they say now, 24/7, in a perfect way.
What advice would you give to someone who may be unfamiliar with these ideas, but still feels a resonance with them? Daniel mentioned the concept of having an inner vocation. Maybe a person doesn't know if they have an inner vocation, but they feel a pull to go to a certain place, to come here, for example, or come to a specific event. They may not know what that call means or what it's for. So apart from that calling, do they need to have prior knowledge or training?
De hecho, no es necesario ningún conocimiento previo, ninguna formación, porque precisamente se allana todo en el contexto en el contexto definible, como que el ser se dejó llevar a ese encuentro. Porque las personas piensan que van a algún lado. En realidad, si la vida quiere...
In fact, no previous knowledge is necessary, no training, because precisely everything is facilitated in the context that can be defined as the being that allows himself to be led to this encounter. Because people think they are going somewhere if life wants. It repulses, and you don't get to the place you want to go, whether consciously or not. Of some potential scope of his consciousness, he could be carried by energy, which is already a quality, to have allowed life, energy, the law of karma, his soul, God, whatever one wants to call it, to have brought him closer to that possibility, to be present in a context where more or less consciously, with different potentials, those who are present, whether they know it or not, are gathered in the name of the One.
Lo sepan o no, se reúnen en el nombre del único. Jesús dijo, cuando 2 o 3 estén reunidos, en mi nombre yo estaré entre ellos. ¿Sí? No estamos ni siquiera... pedimos que ni siquiera se imaginen que estamos comparándonos con el instructor Jesús. Solamente decimos que sus palabras fueron...
Jesus said, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be among them. We ask that you do not even imagine that we are comparing ourselves to the instructor Jesus, only that his words were symbolic, clear, precise, and inspiring. When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be among them. He said, I am the truth and the life. In other words, it is not necessary to think that one is gathering in the name of Jesus, but to gather in the name of the truth is more than enough. So I think that those who come to the place have to be careful that the unpolished aspects of their personality and ego do not disqualify them, that they do not detract from their potential to be present, that they relax, that they do not come into conflict if some of the information that we are going to give rationally is going to have a degree of rejection, doubt, or some degree of disconcertment. When we search for the new and not more of the same, we are tested to see how open we are to the new. These meetings can be defined as meetings of updating or renewal, because we wouldn't do this whole worldwide movement every year just to keep talking about Krishna, Buddha, not even Jesus, Apollonius, or Tiana, or whatever.
This is not to say that they can be put together in an information package when it's necessary to give information that threatens what we are trying to do now, because each and every one of these teachers made contributions that are to a large extent still up to date and still relevant today. That is to say, they are energies that drive the development of the consciousness.
Cuando un ser no se actualiza, entra en inercia, en ritmos naturales de inercia. Entonces la conciencia se conforma con más de lo mismo. Entonces aquellos que sientan que tienen algo que hacer ahí, aunque no puedan definir claramente qué es.
However, there are other contributions that these instructors did not make because the stages where they manifested themselves did not demand it. It was unnecessary, and the only thing a true instructor does is attend to needs. That is why those who come, independently of the knowledge that they think they possess or not, can become open to the unknown, come open to give themselves the opportunity to find a way of updating, renovating, and instruction that is not the most common. We have said more than once that it would be optimal as we would live life with deep gratitude if many groups like ours and instructors could do it simultaneously. Each one making their contribution cope with this great need that the planetary transition has to place human consciousness before instructive information and updating possibilities, which are practically annulled because the pattern of the planetary life, the world power, the institutions do not want the beings to update themselves because updating is growth. When a being is not actualized, it goes into inertia, into natural rhythms of inertia, and then consciousness settles for more of the same. So those who feel they have something to do there, even if they can't clearly define what it is, go, and then we'll see. Some people go to one of these meetings, and after months or years, they realize what they have been there for because they have told us this.
Thank you for being with us. In the following program, we are going to continue with the second part of this interview.